Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're basically setting the time circuits for September 1998.
Oh, a great year.
Right. The
Yeah.
internet is still making that terrible screeching dial-up noise. Flip phones are the absolute height of cool. And on CBS, a certain show about military lawyers it's about to hit its absolute stride. We are talking about season 4 of JAG.
It really is a pivotal moment in television history, and certainly for this series in particular. If you look at the whole trajectory of JAG, season 4 it's really where the show grows up. It ran from September 1998 to May 1999, and it marks this incredibly distinct shift in tone, critical reception, and even institutional support.
Exactly. I feel like those first few seasons, they're really just finding their legs.
Yeah.
You know, balancing the action with the courtroom stuff.
Right, trying to find an identity.
Yeah, they were trying to figure out if they were Top Gun or A Few Good Men. But season 4, this is where the ratings just climb. The military officially gives them this massive bear hug. And the storytelling gets deeper.
It does. And that's really our mission for this deep dive with you today. We want to explore exactly how JAG evolved from a show that was heavy on the action-adventure tropes into a genuinely sophisticated legal drama.
We have so much ground to cover.
We really do. Everything from the resolution of the massive MIA father storyline to Mac's traumatic past just coming back to haunt her.
And we can't forget the international incidents, the baby Pact, which we definitely need to unpack because that is just a legendary moment in TV romance history.
Oh, absolutely.
And the fact that the season ends with the main character basically quitting his job.
It's a bold season. But let's start with the production context, though.
Yeah.
You mentioned the ratings climbing earlier. That really isn't an exaggeration.
No, the numbers are actually wild. According to the data we have, household ratings were up 11% compared to season 3.
Which is huge.
It is a massive jump for a drama in its 4th year. I mean, usually shows start to plateau or dip by then. JAG was accelerating.
And even more telling are the specific demographics. We saw an 8% bump in adults 18 to 49. And a 10% increase in the 25 to 54 bracket.
Oh, wow.
For a network show in the late 90s, growing your audience 4 years in is a huge achievement. It actually finished as the 14th most watched show in the United States.
That puts it right in the big leagues. That's beating established hits and cultural icons of the era. And the critics were starting to notice, too. We have a review here from Michael Killian in the Chicago Tribune that really sums up this whole vibe shift.
Right. Killian was one of the very first major critics to spot what was happening. He noted that the scripts had become, quote, more intelligent and realistic.
Realistic.
Yes. He specifically pointed out that the show moved away from the pure action orientation of the first season towards something much more sophisticated and personal.
It's interesting because usually critics are pretty hard on military procedurals.
Very hard, yeah.
They tend to write them off as jingoistic or just simple. So for a prominent critic to say, hey, this is getting intelligent, that's a really big deal.
He even mentioned that JAG had carved out a niche that was evidenced by numerous fan internet sites. Now, for those of you who didn't live through the internet in the 90s, having a dedicated web ring or a message board community in 1998.
Oh, man, web ring.
Right. It was a burgeoning metric of success. It meant you had a sticky audience that really wanted to discuss the show long after the credits rolled.
It's literally the birth of internet fandom. But beyond the fans and the critics, there was another group that decided they really liked what they were seeing, which is the United States Navy itself.
This is a crucial piece of the puzzle for season 4. By this point, the Navy had become wildly enthusiastic about supporting the series.
Which hadn't always been the case, right? I mean, early on.
No, it had been a bit cooler in the beginning. In the early days, particularly when the show was on NBC, the producers wanted more maverick behavior. Defying orders, going rogue.
And the Pentagon isn't exactly a fan of that portrayal.
Not at all. But by season 4, the relationship had warmed significantly.
We actually have a quote here from Captain Ron Morse from the Navy Office of Information West, which, I have to say, sounds like a sinister organization, but it's essentially just the liaison office in Los Angeles.
Exactly. It's the bridge between the fleet and Hollywood. Captain Morse went on record saying, and I quote, "We treated JAG the way we would any other production. We look at the scripts, the principal characters, and how they respond to the situations they're presented."
How they respond to situations. That is really interesting phrasing. It implies they aren't necessarily censoring the plot. Like, you can have a murder, you can have a plane crash.
Right.
But they are heavily monitoring the behavior of the personnel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They want to ensure that even if the situation is totally dramatic or fictional, The officer's reaction reflects the core values of the Navy. And apparently, Commander Rad and Major Mackenzie passed the test.
With flying colors. Captain Moore said the Navy viewed them as, quote, attractive, smart, dedicated individuals who behave the way naval officers should. So the verdict was that the show reflected well on the Navy.
And that kind of support translates to massive production value, too. Because of this relationship, the production filmed partially on location in Washington, D.C. for this season. You simply can't fake that level of realism on a soundstage.
When you see Harm and Mac actually walking near the Capitol or the monuments, it totally grounds the series. It stops feeling like a backlot in Van Nuys and starts feeling like a real geopolitical drama.
It creates this symbiotic relationship. The show gets the authentic backdrop and access, and the Navy gets a primetime showcase of competence and duty. It completely differentiates JAG from your standard police procedural.
Law and Order has the streets of New York, but JAG had real aircraft carriers and the actual Pentagon.
Right.
Speaking of differentiation, we really need to get into the story now, because Season 4 kicks off with a massive resolution to a cliffhanger from Season 3. We are talking about the episode Gypsy Eyes.
This is the premiere. And honestly, if this was a movie, it would be a summer blockbuster. If you recall, Season 3 ended with Harm and Mac presumed dead in Russia after an altercation with a Russian fighter pilot.
Right, the Russians are claiming they died on a demo ride in a MiG-29. It's a total cover-up. But we, the audience, we know better. We saw them punch out.
Indeed. The premiere reveals they ejected right before the jet was hit by an air-to-air missile. But now they are stuck deep in Russia, miles from any help, and they need to stay totally under the radar, which leads to the Gypsy connection.
They encounter a brother and sister, Vasya and Rusa. They are essentially traveling performers, nomads. Harm and Mac have to disguise themselves as gypsies just to travel by wagon to a train station. It's very cloak and dagger.
Very Cold War thriller.
Yes. But there is this psychological, almost supernatural layer here, too.
Yeah.
Rusa, the sister, has a terrifying vision. She claims to have the sight. She actually sees Russian soldiers attacking her and killing Harm before he can save her.
That sets a really ominous tone for the episode. Harm is convinced it's just a vision, that it won't come true. He's the pragmatist, of course. But as they travel, the tension just keeps ramping up. They eventually get detected by Falcon, the KGB agent we've seen before.
Rex Lynn's character.
Yes. He's a formidable antagonist, usually.
Yeah.
So there's this moment of hesitation. Do they trust him? They decide they have to. And he takes them back to Moscow. There, they reunite with Admiral Chegwidden and Clayton Webb.
And we meet Alexei, who is a double agent. I just love his motivation here. He's loyal to the CIA simply because they pay him the best.
Practicality over ideology. That feels very 90s post-Soviet Russia.
It really does.
But the real emotional weight of this arc isn't the escape itself. It's the destination. They finally arrive in Svichevo. This is where the core mission of the series comes to a head. Harm has spent years searching for his father, Harmon Rab Sr.
This has been the engine of the entire show since the pilot episode. Harm literally joined JAG to find out what happened to his dad in Vietnam, and now they are in Russia, meeting a woman who cared for Harm Sr. after his escape from the Gulag in Vorkuta.
And this is where that vision from Rusa comes back into play in a chilling way.
It honestly gives me goosebumps just thinking about it.
The woman tells a story that mirrors Rusa's vision exactly, except it happened to Harm Sr., not Harm Jr., and it happened to her, not Rusa.
So the vision was a retrocognition, like an echo of the past. The woman confirms that Russian soldiers attacked them. Harm Sr. died defending her.
It's a brilliant narrative echo. It suggests that the trauma of the past is literally echoing into the present. The woman in Svichevo lived the nightmare that Rusa feared. It connects Harm's father's suffering directly to the danger Harm is currently in.
And the outcome of all this.
The woman takes Harm to the location. Harm Sr. was buried in an unmarked grave in the taiga.
Yeah.
Harm actually finds the grave. He finds the cross.
Wow, that's just final. For 3 years, fans thought maybe Dad is still alive, maybe he's a prisoner, maybe he's a spy.
And Gypsy Eyes shuts that door completely. It is a massive narrative pivot for the writers to take. From a character psychology standpoint, Harm has to find a completely new purpose. He can't be the son searching for his father anymore. He is just a man now, a man who finally knows the truth.
It forces a heavy maturity onto the character. He has to accept loss and figure out how to move forward. But he isn't the only one facing major demons this season. If the first part of this deep dive was about Harm's past, this next section is undoubtedly about Major Sarah Mackenzie's past. Mac goes through it.
Season 4 really puts Mac through the ringer. It feels like the writers decided to deconstruct her stoic marine exterior just to see what was underneath. We have to talk about People v.
This is such a heavy episode. Mac is actually charged with murder.
And the victim is her estranged husband, Chris Regal.
Played by Joe Lando, he's a really shady character. He's an ex-convict who shows up in an earlier episode. Mr. Rab goes to Washington looking for money. He's basically the living ghost of Mac's bad decisions. And later, in People v. Mac, he's found dead in a hotel room.
And it looks incredibly bad for Mac. Her fingerprints are on the weapon.
Yeah.
But it gets complicated fast because Mic Brumby, the Australian exchange officer, is defending Mac's former lover and commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Farrow.
It becomes this intense triangular conflict in the courtroom. Harm is defending Mac. Brumby is defending Farrow. Both Mac and Farrow were at the scene, and Brumby's strategy is essentially to blame Mac to save his own client.
Which causes a massive amount of friction. Farrow claims he killed Chris to protect Mac. Mac claims she killed Chris. Harm and Bud Roberts realize that neither of them is actually telling the whole truth.
Right, they're both trying to fall on their swords for each other. It turns out there's a surprise witness who is hiding in the bathroom. The absolute truth is revealed that Mac killed Chris accidentally in self-defense when he pulled a gun on her during a struggle.
It clears her name legally, but think about the psychological trauma of that. Killing your estranged husband. Even in self-defense, that leaves a permanent mark. It forces Mac to confront the violence of her past relationships head-on.
And this episode also highlights the introduction of Commander Ted Lindsay, right?
Yes. He leads the prosecution against Mac, and he manages to permanently alienate himself from the entire JAG staff during this trial. He represents the bureaucratic cold side of the law, the side that doesn't care about the truth as much as securing a conviction. It really highlights the internal politics of the JAG office, showing that sometimes the enemy is inside the building.
But Mac's family trauma doesn't stop with her husband. We absolutely have to talk about Jaggle Bells.
A Christmas episode with a very dark twist. This introduces Chloe Madison, played by a young Mae Whitman.
She's essentially Mac's little sister from a mentorship program, but Chloe is a real handful. She's tough, she's cynical.
Very precocious. She initially claims she's suffering abuse from a stepfather, which instantly triggers Mac's protective instincts. But it turns out Chloe is lying about the abuse just to get attention. However, the real tragedy is her actual backstory. She is the daughter of a sailor who died in the USS Stark incident.
For you listening who might not know, the Stark was the frigate hit by Iraqi missiles back in 1987. So Chloe is a Navy junior who lost a parent to a very real historical war event.
Exactly. Mac has to navigate this incredibly fragile relationship, which forces her to confront her own maternal instincts and her ability to connect with a damaged child. It's Mac looking in a mirror in many ways, and it connects the fictional narrative of JAG to real naval history again. Mac isn't just helping a random kid, she's helping a child of the fleet.
And then the hits just keep coming for Mac. In the episode's second sight, her father is dying in a Catholic hospice.
And she struggles with deep, deep resentment. Her father was an alcoholic, her childhood was abusive, and just incredibly difficult. In this episode, her mother appears, played by the wonderful Conchata Ferrell, and reveals the truth about why she left Mac with her father all those years ago.
It's layer after layer of Mac's past being peeled back. She thought her mother abandoned her. Turns out her mother was literally forced out. Mac has to process all this new information and find a way to forgive while her father is literally taking his last breaths.
And then on a professional level, there is Active Terror, where she faces her former law professor, Juanita Ressler.
A very antagonistic figure. Ressler once told Mac she'd make a better lap dancer than an attorney.
Ouch. That is so specific and cruel.
It shows the sheer disrespect Mac has had to overcome. She had to fight to be a Marine, fight to be a lawyer, and fight to be taken seriously by the people meant to guide her.
So when you look at Season 4 specifically for Mac, it is a season of profound confrontation. She confronts her ex-husband, her father, her mother, and her mentor. It perfectly explains why the critics called the show more sophisticated. You just can't tell these stories with only explosions and dogfights. You need real acting. You need character-driven drama.
It's not just about who flew the plane upside down anymore. Although, to be totally fair to the genre, we do have plenty of case files this season that deal with planes and military ethics. Let's move into those.
There are some truly fascinating ethical dilemmas presented this season that really stand out. Take Angels 30, for example.
This one sounds wild. An F-14 pilot refuses to fire on an Iraqi plane. Why? Because he says he hears the voice of God.
It's a classic conflict between faith and duty. Harm, being the pragmatist and the lawyer, desperately seeks a scientific explanation. He just can't accept, God told me not to shoot as a valid legal defense or a tactical reality. The Navy runs on orders, not divine intervention.
So what exactly does he do to prove it?
He attempts to duplicate the exact mission. He actually goes up in the air to try and find a physical source for the voice. He suspects some kind of atmospheric interference or radio cross-chatter from another channel. It's a great example of how the show treats these mysteries with genuine respect for the pilot's spiritual experience, but an absolute need for factual evidence.
It's interesting that Harm, who just had a somewhat supernatural experience with the vision in Russia, is the one demanding science here.
That's the duality of his character, perfectly summarized. He wants to believe, but his training demands proof.
Then we have Mr. Rab Goes to Washington, which feels incredibly relevant even today. It deals with media ethics and essentially fake news.
It really does. A CNN reporter named Norman Delaporte claims U.S. troops used chemical weapons, specifically sarin gas in the Gulf War against defectors.
That is a massive accusation. I mean, that's a severe war crime.
It is. Harm is assigned to assist Congresswoman Bobby Latham in the official investigation. They dig deep into the claims, and this is where the show takes a very hard, specific stance.
And what do they find?
It's a sensationalist fraud. The reporter was completely driven by ratings, not truth. He deliberately manipulated footage and coerced witnesses.
And we should be clear, for you listening, we're just analyzing how the writers chose to frame this issue. The show uses this plot to present its own perspective on media. I love the observation Harm makes here, though. He asks a rhetorical question: why should the public believe ratings-driven reporters over the ordinary service members who bear the real cost of war?
Right. It reinforces that Navy endorsement we talked about earlier. The narrative positions the military personnel as the truth tellers against what it portrays as a sensationalist media complex. It's a very specific worldview.
We also get some intense international incidents this season. Embassy sounds like a pure action movie plot. Harm and Mac are trapped in the Sudanese embassy.
It is a total die-hard scenario. Rebels seize the building. Mac is taken hostage along with all the VIPs. Harm is loose in the building, crawling through ducts, taking out bad guys one by one.
And this is where we get the classic MacGyver-style move. Harm uses a cigar to signal Morse code via the live news feeds.
It's brilliant television. The rebels are broadcasting their demands on live TV. Harm finds a camera, stands in the background in the shadows, and uses the glowing tip of a cigar to flash a message to the outside world. He intentionally fails to light the cigar in a rhythmic pattern, so the rebels just think he's struggling with a match.
It perfectly blends the action hero trope with the intelligence officer's skill set. He's not just shooting, he's communicating.
And on the completely other end of the spectrum, we have Innocence. This is a massive culture clash episode set in Japan.
A U.S. ensign is accused of rape. The team goes to Japan, and they have to navigate the extreme differences between the Japanese and American legal systems.
Specifically, they deal with the Status of Forces Agreement, or SOFA. The Japanese legal system has a very high conviction rate, historically around 99%, and operates very differently regarding the presumption of innocence and interrogation techniques. The show explores the real-world tension of a U.S. service member being subject to foreign law.
So it's not just a whodunit about proving he didn't do it. It's about navigating a foreign culture where the rules might feel totally alien to an American audience.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, his commanding officer makes these off-the-cuff, arrogant comments to the press that just inflame the situation. It vastly complicates the diplomatic relations. It forces the viewer to step outside the American comfort zone. And it highlights the role of the JAG officer, not just as a lawyer, but as a diplomat in uniform.
It shows the show's incredible range. I mean, from Die Hard and Sudan to comparative legal theory in Tokyo, range is definitely a good word for it, because while all this high-stakes legal stuff is happening, the personal lives of the characters are getting, well, very complicated. Let's talk about relationships.
Well, we certainly have to talk about the newcomer, Royal Australian Navy Commander Mic Brumby.
Mic Brumby, he arrives as an exchange officer, and immediately there is just intense friction with Harm.
It's a rivalry on multiple levels, professional and personal. They clash in the courtroom repeatedly, most notably in People v. Mac, as we discussed, and later in Wilderness of Mirrors. Brumby is the perfect foil for Harm. He's brash, he's Australian, he's very open about his feelings, whereas Harm is reserved and traditionally American.
And Brumby isn't shy about his romantic interest in Mac.
Not at all. He pursues her openly. This forces Harm to confront his own feelings, even if he flat out won't admit them to himself.
But the absolute biggest relationship moment, maybe of the whole series up to this point, happens in the episode. Yeah, baby.
The baby pact.
Yes, you have to set the scene for us. This is iconic.
So Bud Roberts is prosecuting a pregnant Marine sergeant who really wants to stay on the Corps despite her pregnancy. Meanwhile, his wife, Harriet Sims, goes into labor with their child. Emotions are running incredibly high regarding parenthood, family, and the future.
Then on the steps of JAG headquarters.
Harm and Mac have a quiet moment alone. They are reflecting on Bud and Harriet's happiness. And they make an agreement. If they're both single in exactly 5 years, they will have a child together.
A child. Not just we'll try dating, but we will literally have a baby.
It raises the stakes of the will they won't they dynamic to an astronomical level. It acknowledges that they see a future together, even if they aren't emotionally ready for it right now. It gives the fans, the shippers, a concrete timeline. 5 years.
That is a defining moment for TV romances. It's basically them admitting, you are my backup plan, but really you're my primary plan that I'm just too scared to execute right now.
Perfectly put. But Harm does have a personal life outside of Mac this season. He dates Navy psychiatrist Jordan Parker.
Played by Susan Haskell, she appears in Jaggle Bells and Wilderness of Mirrors.
It's a significant relationship because it shows Harm actually trying to build a connection with someone who can clinically analyze him. Jordan challenges him. She calls him out on his emotional unavailability. It's perhaps exactly what he needs after the death of his father, someone to help him process his grief.
And speaking of Harm's physical and mental state, there is a massive medical breakthrough for him in Second Sight.
He learns he was misdiagnosed with night blindness. This is a huge plot point. Remember, Harm was a pilot first. He lost his flight status because of night blindness, which is the entire reason he became a lawyer.
Right. The whole foundational premise of the show is pilot becomes lawyer because he can't fly at night.
But in this episode, a doctor tells him it wasn't night blindness at all, but a different minor condition that can be fully corrected with laser surgery.
This is huge, because if that gets fixed...
It opens the door for him to return to the cockpit. It plants the seed that JAG might not be his permanent home.
Before we get to where that leads, we absolutely have to mention Bud and Harriet. They are the stable heart of the show.
They're growing up too. Bud is promoted to lieutenant. Harriet is promoted to lieutenant junior grade. But they face severe family drama in The Adversaries.
This is the episode with Bud's father, Big Bud.
Bud has to defend his father against major fraud charges. It's an incredibly tricky legal and emotional situation, and Harm actually prosecutes the case.
That is so awkward, prosecuting your best friend's dad.
It is. But the interesting beat is at the very end. Harm wins the case effectively, but he orders Bud Sr. never to tell Bud the real truth about the case outcome, specifically about a plea deal or the specifics of his guilt, just to protect Bud's idealized image of his father. It shows Harm's deeply protective nature over his younger colleagues.
Okay, we are heading toward the end of the season now. We have some major recurring bad guys.
Clark Palmer returns in Wilderness of Mirrors. He's a former DSD agent, Department of Special Defense. He plays a remarkably cruel game, gaslighting Harm by pretending to be his dead father on the phone.
That is twisted, especially after Harm just found his father's grave a few months prior in Russia.
Exactly. Palmer knows exactly where to hurt Harm most. He also kidnaps Jordan Parker. It's a full-on psychological thriller episode. Palmer isn't physically imposing, but he is mentally terrifying. He attacks Harm's sanity.
And the Admiral even gets involved in this one. He enlists Bud, Mac, and Mike to help while he's also trying to prepare for a Supreme Court case.
Yes, there's a great subplot where Bud has to act as the mock Chief Justice to help Chegwidden prepare. It adds some much-needed levity to a very dark episode.
Then we have Charlie Lynch,
the serial killer. He appears in Nobody's Child and returns in the finale, Goodbyes. He is a total chameleon. He targets a young girl, and Harm becomes entirely obsessed with the case. Harm sees himself as the ultimate protector.
Which leads us directly to the season finale, Goodbyes. The title really says it all.
Harm tracks Lynch to a ship to save the twin sister of a previous victim. There is a brutal confrontation, and he manages to save the girl. But the real climax happens back at JAG headquarters.
Admiral Chegwidden offers Harm a choice.
Harm's eyes are fixed now. He is officially medically cleared to fly again. Chegwidden gives Harm a chance to stay at JAG, to keep doing the legal work. He basically says, you can stay here and be a great lawyer.
And Harm declines.
He declines. He chooses to fly. There's a beautiful scene where he receives F-14 manuals from his old RIO, Skates Hawks. He holds them like they're pure gold.
And the season ends with Harm leaving JAG.
It completely upends the status quo. The lead lawyer is no longer a lawyer. He's a pilot again. It signals that Season 5 is going to be completely different. It was a massive gamble by the showrunners.
Imagine being a fan in May 1999. The show just had its best season, ratings are way up, and the main character just walked out the door.
It created immense anticipation for the next season. It showed that the show wasn't afraid to change its fundamental dynamics.
So let's wrap this up. What a journey. We started with Harm and Mac basically dead in Russia, and we ended with Harm quitting to fly F-14s.
It is definitively a season of maturing. The production values went up, the ratings went up, and the characters had to grow up. Harm let go of his father's ghost. Mac confronted her family trauma. They made a pact for the future.
And the Navy gave it 2 big thumbs up.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to ponder. The collaboration between the Navy and the production team was tighter than ever in Season 4.
It definitely added realism, but it does make you think.
It raises a very valid question. Does the Navy's enthusiastic support reviewing scripts to see how characters respond to situations make the show a more authentic portrayal of duty? Or does it subtly turn the entertainment into a carefully curated public relations tool? Is it art imitating life, or life curating art to ensure the image remains pristine?
That is definitely something for you to chew on, especially when you watch Mr. Rabb Goes to Washington and see the media portrayed as the villain while the military is the victim. It's a perspective worth analyzing for yourselves.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive into JAG Season 4. It's been a pleasure unpacking the dossiers with you.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you on the next one. Dismissed.